Hi everybody, I'm Bree the Plant Lady, checking in with a weekly garden tour. Now last night we've had our coldest temperatures so far this winter, and it was actually 2 degrees colder than last year's record. So we got down to 21 last night. You can see the broccoli is looking less than stellar. It's super bright and sunny today. It's still cold. I came out last night and harvested most of the broccoli because generally when the foliage gets like this kind of coloration, it gets really kind of wilty, and the florets don't really make it. Now I left a few that are really small and they look pretty nipped. So let me turn this camera around and show you some of our frost damage. So we'll start here at the 100-gallon root pouches. And this was my first crop of broccoli, which I thought would have been harvested back in November. And for some reason it took forever. You can see what I mean with just wilty foliage. Now it's not dead, and I'm not gonna pull it out because a lot of times it'll actually sort of sprout. This is a heading variety, so it doesn't really sprout, but hope springs eternal. Now you see I've left some, and any flowers that actually had leaves over them got protection, so that is not damaged at all. And everything's still kind of frozen. I think we're at like 30 degrees right now. But these cool crops are generally fine with temperatures like this. Like if we get down into like below 15, that's when, for me, it's like, okay, either sacrifice them or cover them. But for low 20s, I'm not gonna cover. Here is a sprouting variety of broccoli that I should have harvested, because you see it's already starting to flower. But you can see the habit of the sprouting broccoli is just to put up, you know, side shoots everywhere. You know, carrots are totally unfazed. Parsnips are unfazed. Onions and garlic unfazed. Barley unfazed. This arugula looks a little droopy, but that was already starting to bolt and go to flower. So, you know, this is really an opportunity now. If some of these things end up coming out, I'll be able to put new crops in their place. So it's not really a loss, especially since I did harvest a lot. Now here's a broccoli that definitely looks like it got frost damage. Sort of off color, and it feels wilty. Same thing here. You can see that definitely was frosted. And you see how it's just sort of falling apart. That's frost damage. While I'm here, I'll show you the Schultzia, the California poppy, which was full of tender growth because, of course, you know, we were in the 80s a week ago. It's frosted, but it's fine. It'll actually recover. And the Papaver somniferum, these are all self-sown, totally unfazed by the cold. So no need to ever cover your poppies or larkspur. Here's larkspur, not damaged in any way from the frost. And of course, none of the weeds are either. The weeds never die. Certainly not from 20 some degrees. I wish they would, but they don't. That's not how it works. So the big Edgeworthia had definitely already started flowering, and it's fine. This hopefully will slow it down a little so that I'll get to enjoy it for a little longer, but you can see there's already lots of open flowers. It smells so good. And I've already been using these in floating flower arrangements. So undamaged from the recent cold snap. And as I scan the woodland, which I did get cleaned up a bit, you'll see more Edgeworthias that are starting to flower. And Camellia's totally unfazed. This is a really cool Higo variety called Happy. Higos are selected to have those large stamens. They look like big sunshines. And farther into the woods, you can see Camellia Brie is still flowering. And over here, Helen Beach, again, totally unfazed. Camellias are very resilient. Flowers still opening. Over here, lots of camellia flowers still on this lost label. Beautiful pink, early bloomer. And I see a handful more buds on these varieties over here. So, you know, the cold slows it down, but it doesn't make it stop. And Crimson Candles, which is usually blooming in February, is way ahead of schedule. Not quite open, but showing a lot of bud color. So the warm up that we had over the holidays has definitely accelerated everything, but now we have kind of consistently much colder temperatures, and hopefully that'll put us on schedule to actually have a proper winter and spring. So showing you here the back property, which not that soon, but soon enough is going to be opened up, and this will actually be like not a driveway, but it will be a driving path. I'm not like concreting it or anything. And Nucio's Cameo was in full bloom a week ago. You can see those open flowers definitely got nipped. Now the plant itself is fine, but you know, these were beautiful pink blooms, and the cold turns them brown. But there's some new ones opening. Look at that. I mean, I know a lot of people don't live where you can actually grow camellias. You know, I really think Zone 6, there are some varieties, none of what I'm showing you, but there are some good varieties for Zone 6, but really camellias are best in Zone 7 through 9. Now, onto some of the area that I did last week before it got cold. And I did get this whole border cleaned up, and this has all been reseeded. Nothing has germinated. It hasn't even been a week yet. You see there's so much that has already germinated. This is all self-sown. Mostly Larkspur and Nigella. There's some poppies through here. A lot of Larkspur over here. And I got this border cleaned up. I didn't weed it as well as I should have, but I got all this sown. So it looks a lot better. It's amazing how messy it was. Driving me completely crazy. So now when I'm in the next door house, I look out and it doesn't look like utter chaos. And as I've mentioned earlier, I'm gonna basically from the forsythia back, that's all gonna come out. I'm gonna open this up. You can see the forsythia had started to bloom, which is actually pretty frequent. We very often get these, you know, warm periods and then it gets cold. And, you know, the Carolina environment in winter is really kind of up and down, and it can cause a lot of heartache, but gosh, those warm days sure are nice, so I'm not complaining. Of course, the Prunus mumes were all in bloom a week ago, and they still are blooming, but the cold has definitely knocked a lot of flowers off. Pink Panther is always the last to bloom, and you see it's showing some color. Hopefully it'll just sort of pause, and whatever buds haven't opened will open later when it's more appropriate. And Josephine over there, the soft white, Matsubura red up by the umbrella. I did get this bed cleaned up, replanted. It makes a world of difference when I look out my kitchen that these borders are no longer messy and chaotic. And I got my workspace cleaned, and I have a few new experiments that I probably need to come through and just add a little bit more soil, because we got really heavy rain and that made a bunch of the grain seeds surface. So all of these black pots are different varieties of grains, winter grains, wheat, rye, oats, and barley. And then behind here in the bags are all poppies. So these are two of my experiment areas that are on the north side of a south-facing fence. So they don't really get full sun right now, but with every day the sun gets a little higher in the sky, and this is eventually full sun. And this area is cleaned and seeded with sweet peas. I suspect it'll be a long time before the sweet peas germinate because it's dramatically colder than it was a week ago. And here you can see like garlic totally unfazed by the cold. Here's some broccoli that I didn't harvest that actually still looks okay. You know, the daikon radish are fine. The Ms. America mustard look great. The violas not impacted at all by the cold. Now my my rain gauge was absolutely full of ice. We did have a lot of rain and I didn't empty it. I'm really shocked that it didn't break. But there you have it. What is that? Oh, almost 3 inches. Almost 3 inches of ice. So we had a wet week. And in here you can see I did not cover the cabbages and they do look a little frost damaged. Over here these look fine, but they're not ready to be harvested, and I just don't see the need in covering. It actually often does more damage than not, because if it's windy it blows around and breaks the plants, and if it snows or rains on top then it crushes everything. And I've just learned over the years that covering is not my style. It's different if you're growing in distinguished beds. But here you can see 20 degrees did not do any significant damage at all to any of these cool season greens, especially the Ms. America mustard. It looks a little wilted, but it'll pop right back once we get over freezing, which we are not yet. And over in the fire pit, all of these plants look fine. I did bring the small kale, the seeded kale pot, into the heated shed because I've been eating off of that. But everything else here in pots looks fine. And the arugula back here, just the pieces that were starting to bolt. Otherwise, there's still tons of arugula to harvest. Now, in contrast to the other side of the fence where I have those experiments, here is the south side of the north fence, which gets full sun, and this was direct seeded with poppies. And last week I showed you they were germinating. I don't see a lot of action. And here we go. Here's some. And my neighbor's puppies are here to say hi. Hi guys. Look at your little noses. Hi. They're the best dogs. So they do look a little frosted, but I think they'll be fine. When I say I wish the cold weather would knock out some weeds, I very specifically mean vetch. Vetch is totally unfazed by the cold weather. There's a lot of it in here. Ugh, hate vetch. So the succulent table looks a little wilty, but that'll be fine. And a lot of my floating arrangements are frozen in place. See? Frozen, solid piece of ice. And that's great. It preserves. But this is why you use plastic and not glass, because glass would shatter. So that's why I always use plastic containers with no drainage holes. But I love when they freeze in place. It's like you've frozen a moment in time, and it's so pretty. And the colder temperatures really do preserve these floating arrangements so that they last a lot longer. Last week they were lasting like 3 days because it was so warm. And these should last weeks if we stay cold. Of course, the heated shed is super full. That did get a little frost damage from the night before. I noticed that and I was like, oh no, I want to eat this. So I brought it in. Everything in here is doing good. I've resisted any urges to water. That's the critical component for all these succulents. And I'm doing dry January, so I have no need to get to the refrigerator. Show you another floating arrangement that's totally frozen. But it smells so good. And I have this here on the back porch right by the back door. So every time you walk out, that's what you smell. Oh gosh, I just love Edgeworthia so much. Jasmine nudiflorum, slowing down, but not really fazed by the cold. It's always a bright part of January. Over here, not much going on. And these floating arrangements, I would assume, are also frozen. Let's check them out. Oh yeah, right? No, they're melting because they're in more sun. They are frozen. You see it's like, oh, I'm breaking it. Never mind, I won't do that. This one's already thawed. And these also just smell so good because, of course, they're right here at the door that we primarily use that goes right into the kitchen. When you open the door, you get that amazing scent from the Edgeworthia. And of course, the kitties like to use them to drink out of. We have fancy cats here. They're like, we live in a botanical garden. Of course, we had to drink water that's infused with flowers. And to show you the barley wall, it's great, no covering. Honestly, I don't think that there would be a temperature that I would cover this at. Now, these cardoons look a little less awesome. I think they'll be fine. Long term, I'll end up cutting those old leaves off. But you can see why I love greens so much, because they are totally unfazed by North Carolina winter temperatures. And though these mustards look a little wilty, I can just trim those down and I know they'll be fine. And this is definitely a kind of a special microclimate right here. All this concrete and brick, east facing. So everything looks fine. And in here, I did move some glass flowers into this bed because it is driving me crazy because it's so boring. But there's so much germinating. And I just have to keep reminding myself that eventually this will look awesome. But right now it's super boring. There's no other way to put it. But I mean, if you look here, you see, you know, bachelor buttons and tons of poppies. This is really gonna be so, so pretty. It's just gonna be like a little while still. So these flowers, the glass flowers, give it a little more interest. And I noticed this, everything I think is melting now, which is good because the poor birds wanted something to drink, and of course this is a solid sheet of ice. But the sun is out, it's gonna get warmer. It's kind of exciting to have some ice here. I'm glad we didn't really get any snow. I was supposed to be at a trade show this week, and because of the terrible weather, I didn't drive to Baltimore, and I would have gotten stuck in that pile up on 95 and probably had to sleep in my Prius. So I'm pretty glad I didn't make that choice. In here, you'll see lots of larkspur and also cilantro starting. Ooh, exciting. And these were not damaged, and of course tons and tons of poppies back there. So this border is going to be really pretty in the spring. And now the wave is completely planted. Obviously the barley poppy combo has germinated through the sunny part. And then over here under the live oak, just a few days ago, I got this replanted with mustard and lunaria and collards. I think that's what I ended up doing over here. So that should fill in, and then the wave will all be green. And just to give you a quick view of this Carex window box that's doing really, really well. This is a native Carex cherokeensis. and it's pretty cold right now. I'm gonna give it a little drink of water, but overall this is just a wonderful winter interest option for a very, very low maintenance window box. And I hope you've enjoyed today's garden tour. I look forward to sharing updates each week with all of you from my home garden here in Zone 7, Raleigh, North Carolina. And I'm wishing you the best for the next week to come. Stay safe, stay healthy, everybody. Happy gardening. Thanks for watching.